Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. This is a presentation for our grief and loss class taught by Dr. K, summer 2025 semester. Our group will be exploring the topic of anticipatory grief, holding loss before it comes. Presenting today, myself, Kelsey, along with Marianne, Katie, and Lillian. So, we're kind of starting our question with what exactly is anticipatory grief? It's a form of grief that begins before the loss actually happens. So we often see this in the context of terminal illness, dementia, aging, big life transitions, situations where loss is approaching and people are already feeling the emotional weight of it, even though the person or the situation is still physically present. What's interesting is anticipatory grief isn't officially listed in the DSM, but it is widely recognized in trauma-informed care, hospice, mental health settings, and this is something that we will likely see a lot as clinicians in practice. Um, One of the reasons it can be so hard, is that people don't always recognize this as grief, right? There's this sense of, why am I feeling this way? Nothing has happened yet. But internally, a lot is actually happening, and it can feel really isolating, kind of like you're mourning in secret before the world acknowledges the loss. And so, moving on to more of a clinical perspective, we wanted to just kind of highlight some of the common signs and symptoms. So, emotionally, people might feel sadness, anxiety, guilt, anger. Physically, it can show up through changes in sleep, appetite, fatigue. There's also this emotional push-pull. Some people start to detach as a way to cope, while others feel more intensely connected. That tension can be really confusing and exhausting because the loss hasn't happened yet. These feelings are often misunderstood or minimized by others, or even by the person experiencing them. To help sort of frame this experience, we looked through the lens of a few different theories. The first one, attachment theory. We know Bowlby believed that in the earliest bonds, especially with caregivers, really shape how we connect and attach with people throughout our lives. So when we're really deeply connected to someone, grief is a natural response to any threat to that bond. In anticipatory grief, we're already feeling the loss of the person as they start to change and decline. And that connection shifts, and our grief begins before we even say goodbye. And the second one was the dual process model by Strobe and Shute. And this kind of just describes how people oscillate between two types of coping. So, one that's loss oriented, facing the pain, feeling the sadness, and then one that's restoration oriented, focusing on the planning, the adjusting, or even like the distracting ourselves. So, in this type of grief, this back and forth can feel pretty constant. You're grieving what's unfolding, but also trying to prepare and keep going. So it's not really a linear path. Think of it more like a pendulum. And then you can move on to slide 3. So now we're just going to open it up and kind of shift or frame this presentation to have like a clinical perspective and a personal experiences lens. So Katie's going to be sharing from the clinician point of view, while Marianne, Lillian, and myself are going to speak from our own experiences on anticipatory grief. And then we'll tie it all together in the end with a few creative elements.
Thank you, Kelsey, for that introduction. So we're going to kind of start off here with going into some of our personal experiences. So Marianne, what are some of your personal experiences with anticipatory grief?
Yeah, thanks. So the one that sticks out closest to me is my father. He had been diagnosed with cancer and had a little bit of a stretch before he did pass away. And maybe Lillian, if you can move to the slide 11, can be a little bit of a backdrop to it all. But yeah, he was diagnosed with cancer, and he did live quite a long time, well surpassed the prediction. He had been given 5 to 10 years, and he lived 20 years. But it was quite a roller coaster. And I guess to help is the five stages of grief and maybe my relationship to that as well. So, when he was first diagnosed, it was just the bit of shock, fear, and disbelief, and really the fear of losing your father. I think I was maybe 22 at the time. So it was just, it fell too soon. So, and then again, the anxiety. So following this little pattern just felt really home to me. Going to the bargaining, and for me, that was just hoping I could see my dad be his normal self before he passed. And I was lucky enough to have it happen many times. But I think that there were so many times that his doctor would say he would drop down and he would bounce back up. So there were so many times we felt we were going to lose him that I feel like I was really working through it all the time. That this is going to be it. This is going to be it. This is going to be it. And with that, I think it gave me that a gift of a lens to really appreciate his time, be it holidays or birthdays or whatever kind of celebrations. I was very aware of how lucky I was and knowing that this could be the last. Um, and and again, going to the last piece of this about the acceptance, and the depression is in there somewhere, of course, too. But um, accepting that this is what it is. And I can't say that I didn't also experience a little bit of shock when he did die because we've had that roller coaster. So when it finally happened, it was a bit of a shock, but there also was a little bit of relief because there was such a long time, but a lot of gifts in between, but a lot packed in.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing that. Lillian or Kelsey, did you have any personal experiences that you'd like to share as well?
Yeah, I was going to kind of take a different lens on anticipatory grief and talk about how anticipatory grief can also be applied to a loss that's not associated with death. My personal experience was I knew that I was going to no longer be living with the family that I had grown up with for my whole life. When I turned 19, I stopped living with that family, and that was the anticipation before that happened was just very, it broke my heart, obviously, because I knew that all of those memories that I shared with my family were going to end. The relationships that I had with many people in the house weren't going to be the same. And I was definitely grieving those relationships that I had with them, which was definitely very difficult. And navigating that anticipation and the feelings that came along with it was definitely important. Um, and it definitely helped to talk to people about it. And I guess talk to a lot of people that understood where I was coming from and talk to people that also had the same experiences as me. Um, that was very helpful. Yeah, I'm gonna hand it off to Kelsey.
Thanks. Um, for me, looking back, I lost my mom to cancer. She was 60, I was 29. One of the biggest things that I think about when reflecting on my personal experiences is just wishing that there had been more support for the caregivers. So I left my job for a year to take care of my mom full time, and that was a gift. Of course, I got to spend, that beautiful last year of her life with her, but it also came with complete burnout. We didn't have like space to process what was happening. And at the time, I just didn't have the knowledge that I have now. So it was like I was just trying to get through it like anybody else. Um, our hospice team, unfortunately, just wasn't present and we were at home with her. So we kind of had to navigate everything on our own. And my dad was just super overwhelmed. He just didn't know where to start. I wish that we had like a social worker or a healthcare provider just to like check in and help us name that what we were going through was anticipatory grief. Like we just truly felt completely lost, had no idea. So after my mom died, my dad, my sister, and I, we all like really struggled with complicated grief and anxiety. And this was almost 7 years ago, and we still do to some extent to this day. And one other thing I wanted to point out was that we were so focused on hope because that's like what we thought we were supposed to be focused on. And a lot of people meant well, but they always offered like, it was like a toxic positivity, almost like miracle cures and special diets and like just advice in that way, instead of just really sitting with the reality of what we were facing. So those are some of my personal experiences.
That's a really interesting perspective that I'm sure a lot of people can relate to. And that actually, you answered our next question there, if Lillian wanted to hop there. So, yeah, did you have any other type of experiences about what resources you wish that you had or had known about that maybe we'll learn about today?
I would say, my mom was my dad's primary caregiver, and I wish there could have been more help. I feel that the years that she spent caring for him really reeled her into depression. And after he passed, she really dove into depression, and her next 10 years of life really were not living. So I wish there was more help for the caregivers that are directly with them, some sort of respite, or I would even go to the place of after the death, um, having supports in place or offerings, because I think that when you have cared for someone so long, and it could be in an intense year or in a 20-year span or what have you, what do you do? Some people don't know what to do after with that kind of loss. And I know for myself, and for my two sisters, I feel our whole family was just like, it just was the weirdest, eeriest thing. And yeah, so I do wish that there could have been especially more support for my mother.
Thank you so much. I think that we've all learned through our research in this project is that social workers do play a vital role in supporting families and individuals that are facing anticipatory grief or grief. And there are several roles that social workers do have within this space that can offer support in different ways. And so I just wanted to touch on some of these roles. And if Lynn, actually, you can pop over to the next slide to kind of get a visual. Here's just a few of the roles that we've found. So there's a palliative care social workers, hospice social workers, grief counselors, and a death doula, also known as an end of life care doula. And so each of these roles have a different, offer different resources. Um, as far as the palliative care, you'll see a lot of these type of social workers in hospital settings or long-term care settings, and they provide emotional support, help with decision making, and they assist in navigating the healthcare system. Hospice social workers are supporting people who are approaching the end of life. They guide families through this anticipatory grief, provide counseling, and help coordinate hospice services. This helps a lot to bring peace and closure to families. Grief counselors specialize in helping individuals process their emotions before and after loss. In cases of anticipatory grief, they provide space to talk through fears, sadness, and what to expect, and helping clients cope in healthy ways. And a non-clinical role is the end-of-life doula, and they offer the emotional, spiritual, and practical support at the end of life. They help families prepare for death. They offer a presence and comfort that maybe a clinical type of role wouldn't. And it also is really helpful for families who have really unique rituals and want to have a special, more unique moment for that end of life for their loved one. And this next in this video here, it's a clip from a show on Fox or on FX called Dying for Sex. And it actually is highlighting the life of Molly and how she is dealing with terminal cancer. And in the clip, the hospice nurse breaks down the process of death and what it really looks like. And you can see the different emotional reactions between her mother and her best friend, who are her supporters and caregivers through this.
And when you start active dying.
What's active dying?
Oh, active dying is a sacred time. At least it used to be, and it still is in some parts of the world. It's the moment when you're very close to death and your body starts shutting down. How's everyone doing? I'm looking at you, Gail.
If Molly wants to hear it, I could hear it. You guys, come here.
I'm good. I'm good. I'm good. In active dying, you won't be fully conscious, and your jaw muscles will relax, your breathing changes, and there might be this gurgling in the back of your throat caused by something unfortunately called terminal secretions. I know. And when you are very close to death, your breathing goes into a cycle of deep, slow breaths and long pauses. And then eventually there is a breath out that is not followed by a breath in. And that's it.
Yeah. Make sure that my mouth isn't open when I die. Okay.
It's a really great show that highlights the different experiences that everyone has, and especially that anticipatory grief with someone dealing with terminal cancer. Now, Marianne, I know you had a slide to explain some of resources or some different type of ideas that people can check out or what you learned along your process. So what would you like to share there?
Sure. Yeah, I think these are some things that I've learned along the way and that other people have shared too, to help in the process of dealing with anticipatory grief. So some things that I just had mentioned here are doing things that involve maybe a physical outcome. So it could be, dancing or exercise or, walking, things like that, that can help regulate our nervous systems. And there's also journaling, poetry, things like that, just being with people that understand and that can give you a space to just really hear you and validate your feelings and not try to fix you. And I love the thought about finding time to check in and check out. So finding that time to be able to just be with yourself, mornings, evenings, whenever, and then giving yourself permission to check out because sometimes it just gets all overwhelming, no matter what kind of grief that is, what Lillian had spoken about and Kelsey, it's really giving ourselves permission to just check out. Sometimes movies are a great way to do it, or just something that really gets our mind off of it to just really give us ourselves permission to not be with it 24/7. Yeah, and I think that about covers it, and there's some other things on there too. So
Yeah, these are really amazing suggestions, and that really segues in that creative aspect of like painting and finding those ways to help coping. That I know Lillian and Kelsey have some great creative reflections they'd love to share.
Thank you, Katie. So I made this painting, and when I sat down, I thought about what anticipatory grief looked like. For me, I thought about like a dark red, not like an angry red, but just a dark, moody red. So I decided to paint that, and the blue squiggles on the corners and like more towards the outside left, they symbolize to me like I guess the curiosity of what it would be like outside of the painting, like what feelings are out there, what life would be like after what's going on inside this painting. And then I just drew a person, just sitting in kind of the blurriness of feeling that grief and all the emotions that come with it. I thought it was a good representation of kind of being not so much in a bubble, but in a space where you are feeling these feelings and you're stuck in a moment of time where something that you don't really want to be going through is happening. So yeah, that's what I did. And I'm gonna go to the next slide where Kelsey wrote a poem.
Thanks. I just want to say that that really resonated. And I wrote this poem recently. I used to write poetry a lot to help, and I've kind of tapered off with that. So this was a nice way to reconnect with that artistic piece. So go ahead.
The slow goodbye. I didn't know what anticipatory grief was. I only knew my mom was fighting for her life, and we were all holding on to hope, like it was the only thing keeping her here. She never stopped fighting. Even when her body begged for rest, she clung to life with warrior hands, and none of us knew how to talk about death without feeling like we were giving up on her. But my body knew from the moment I got that phone call. Cancer. My nervous system braced for a truth that my mind refused to speak. Looking back now, I see it in the photos, her fading frame, her tired eyes, and I wonder how I didn't see it then. I was deep in the doing, in the care, too focused to feel what was quietly unraveling. On her 60th birthday, she didn't want to be seen. Something in her shifted, and something in me did too. We didn't say it, but it lingered in the air, like the final note of a song. There were visitors, music, stories, and underneath it all, a knowing, a silent ache that grew louder in my chest with every day that passed. When she could no longer rise from her bed, when her voice became a whisper, when her hands couldn't hold anything anymore, I knew, but still I couldn't say it. So I sat beside her and ached. The night before she died, I remember whispering to myself, this might be the night. For a moment, I felt peace because loving her meant letting her go. Grief didn't begin the day she died. It began long before, in the quiet moments of knowing without saying, seeing without accepting. That slow goodbye nearly broke me, but it also shaped me. Her love lives on in me. In the quiet moments, I still feel her presence, not in grand signs, but in the way that I love, in the way I listen, the way I keep going. This grief, this class, this reflection, it brings her close again. For that, I'm grateful.
Wow, Kelsey. That was really beautiful.
It really was beautiful.
Thank you.
Okay. So these are just some resources that we put in for you guys to look at, and if anyone here is going through something or has anything that they resonated with that maybe they want to look through these resources and just take a look and read up, feel free to look through them. Yeah. Does anybody else have anything to say?
Yeah, I think these resources are great. And what I think a lot of us have learned through this experience is that we want to be advocates for families and having our own personal experiences that maybe we didn't have those type of people and professionals in our life. And we've learned that we really want to be those type of providers. And so hopefully these resources will also be a way for all of us to share and pass on this knowledge. So thank you all.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.